Nobody was ready for the photo that dropped late at night. No press release. No warning. Just a dim hospital room, harsh white lights, tubes where smiles used to be, and one familiar face that instantly made fans feel sick to their stomachs. David Toborowsky. The same David who laughs loud, loves harder, and always seems like the guy who somehow survives everything. And suddenly he was lying in a hospital bed. Admitted, vulnerable, quiet. And the scariest part wasn't what we saw. It was what we weren't being told. Because when someone like David goes silent, when the jokes stop and the updates slow down, you know something isn't right. And I need you to stay with me for this, because the story behind David Toborowsky being admitted to the hospital is not what most people think. And the final truth, that part hit even his closest supporters like a punch to the chest. I know what you're probably thinking right now. Reality stars go to the hospital all the time. Stress, exhaustion, maybe something minor. But this felt different. It felt heavy. It felt personal. And as someone who's watched David from the very beginning, not just as a TV personality but as a real human being who's laid his flaws out in the open, this one hurt in a way that's hard to explain. If you've been following our channel for a while, you know we don't jump to panic. We wait. We listen. We read between the lines. And tonight, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to tell you the full story the way a friend would. Honest, emotional, no filters. And before we go any further, if you care about the people behind these reality TV moments, if you stay up late worrying about them like they're family, take a second to subscribe. Not because I'm asking, but because this community gets it. You get it. And stories like this deserve to be told with heart. Now let's talk about David Toborowsky. Not the meme version. Not the edited for TV version. The real man. Before the fame, before the cameras, David's life was messy. Painfully messy. He wasn't the polished success story people love to celebrate. He struggled. Financially, emotionally, spiritually. There were moments when he barely had his footing, let alone a plan. He talked openly about losing jobs, living paycheck to paycheck, and feeling like he was always one bad day away from losing everything. That kind of pressure doesn't just disappear when cameras show up. It buries itself deep in your chest and waits. Then came 90 Day Fiancé, and with it, Annie. Their love story wasn't perfect. It was awkward, judged, laughed at, criticized from every angle. People called it fake. People said she was using him. People said he was a mess who didn't deserve happiness. And through all of that, David smiled. He joked. He leaned into the criticism like it didn't hurt. But anyone who's ever smiled through pain knows the truth. It hurts more when you pretend it doesn't. Over time, something changed. David and Annie became one of the most loved couples in the franchise. Not because they were glamorous, but because they were real. They argued. They struggled. They laughed loudly and loved publicly. Fans rooted for them because they felt earned. David wasn't some perfect hero. He was a man who fell down a lot and kept getting back up. But here's the part nobody was ready for. Getting back up over and over again takes a toll. A quiet toll that doesn't show up on Instagram stories or cameo videos. A toll that builds while you're busy surviving. When the hospital admission news broke, social media exploded in the most chaotic way. TikTok was flooded with shaky voiceovers and stitched videos of fans replaying old clips, saying things like, "Why does this feel serious?" And, "This doesn't look like a routine visit." On X, people were spiraling. One post read, "David has been through too much. Please don't let this be bad." Another said, "I'm actually scared. He's always the strong one." Reddit threads popped up within minutes, with fans dissecting every detail, every shadow in the photo, every word in Annie's caption. Instagram comments were raw. "Praying so hard right now. This man deserves peace. Please tell us he's okay." And yet, there was no clear answer. That's when the first emotional layer peeled back. At first, the story seemed simple. David wasn't feeling well. Something felt off. They went to the hospital to be safe. That's what people told themselves because it's easier to breathe when you believe it's nothing serious. David even tried to keep it light, reassuring fans that everything was under control. But his eyes told a different story. They looked tired. Not just physically tired, soul tired. Then came the second layer. Sources close to the couple started hinting that this wasn't sudden. That David had been pushing through discomfort for a while. Ignoring signs. Brushing things off. Saying, "I'll deal with it later." And if you know David's history, that makes sense. He's the guy who keeps going. The guy who doesn't want to be a burden. The guy who laughs instead of complains. But here's where it starts to hurt. The third layer was fear. Real fear. Not just from fans, but from inside their inner circle. Hospital admissions aren't announced casually. Tests were being run. Time was passing. Annie stayed close. Too close. The kind of close you stay when you're scared to leave the room. And people noticed something chilling. David stopped posting. For a man who's always online, always connecting, that silence was loud. I know what you're thinking, but wait until you hear this. The fourth layer was the emotional crash. Behind the scenes, David was forced to slow down in a way he never had before. No jokes, no distractions, just him, hospital walls, and the weight of everything he's been carrying for years. Fame pressure, financial responsibility, being the strong one, being the provider, being the husband everyone cheers for. And sometimes, when the body finally stops, it's because the heart has been screaming for rest. Doctors don't just admit someone without reason. And while details were kept private, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about physical health. This was about burnout, stress, the kind of emotional exhaustion that sneaks up on you when you think you've already survived the worst. Fans started asking hard questions. Did we push him too hard? Did fame save him or slowly break him? Why do we only notice when someone ends up in a hospital bed? And then came the fifth layer. The one that broke people. It wasn't a dramatic diagnosis. It wasn't a shocking accident. It was something quieter and somehow more terrifying. David admitted that he hadn't been listening to his body. That he'd been ignoring warning signs because he didn't want to scare anyone. Because he didn't want to disappoint fans. Because he didn't want to feel weak again after finally feeling like he'd won. That admission hit harder than any headline. Because how many times have we done the same thing? How many times have we told ourselves we'll rest later, talk later, feel later? How many times have we smiled for others while falling apart inside? Seeing David in that hospital bed forced people to confront an uncomfortable truth. Strength doesn't mean silence. Survival doesn't mean you're okay. Annie eventually shared a small update. Not polished, not dramatic, just gratitude. Gratitude for doctors. Gratitude for prayers. Gratitude that they caught things before it was too late. And in that moment, fans weren't just relieved. They were emotional. Because for the first time, David wasn't the entertainer. He was just a man who needed help. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you checked in on someone who always seems fine? When was the last time you let yourself rest before your body forced you to? David Toborowsky being admitted to the hospital wasn't just celebrity news. It was a warning wrapped in a familiar face. A reminder that even the strongest, funniest, most resilient people have breaking points. And sometimes, the scariest moments aren't the loud ones. They're the quiet nights when someone finally stops running. David is recovering. Slowly, carefully, and maybe that's the biggest win of all. Not bouncing back instantly, not pretending everything is perfect, but choosing to heal. And if you're still here with me, thank you. Truly, because caring this deeply about people you've never met says something beautiful about you. Let me know in the comments how this news made you feel. Did it scare you? Did it make you think about your own health? About someone you love? We'll keep watching this story with compassion, not gossip. Because behind every headline is a human being. And tonight, that human being is David Toborowsky.